just want to start by welcoming you all. James McKeown from iGaming Business was originally going to come and say hello and welcome and say a few words, but his kid is going to nursery, so I think that was somehow more important than hanging out with us. So my name is Aideen Shortt. I started in the industry back in '99, and I've worked with a lot of operators, I've worked with suppliers, and I first started looking at mobile way back in '94, '95, before it was even a viable opportunity. In recent times, though, I'm writing the report commissioned by iGaming Business on mobile gambling. So it's very much a how-to report. So it covers everything from who's doing what, but also things like marketing, the opportunities, the obstacles. And so a lot of that is going to be what we're touching on here today. We have a panel. Nikki Senyard is going to join us in just a minute. She's just running a little late. Nikki is the CEO and founder of Income Access, which I presume everybody knows. And Avery Rotem, say hello, Avery. He's been around the industry since 2000. He was one of the pioneers of Playtech, and he established the mobile client for Casino Truppe. He's worked with Euro partners, and in 2009 he set up a company called OnMobi. And OnMobi is a full-service marketing company, and they work with clients such as NeoGames, Titan. And he has a very, very innovative poker app that is used as a marketing tool and a support tool both for online and mobile, and he's going to be running us through that during the panel. Then we have, second person is Bill Rogers. He is the Client Services Director of Latitude Digital Marketing. Again, they're a full-service marketing agency focusing on PPC, SEO, conversion and analytics and affiliates, and they have a very extensive mobile section, and they work with quite a few gaming clients. And he has previously managed the European affiliations for Dell through Trade Doubler. So again, he's very experienced in this. In terms of the agenda, we're going to start off with quite a brief mobile marketing overview. So I'll run through the market size, the operators, the devices, the technology. And then the main part of today is going to be about marketing and about affiliates and opportunities and obstacles. Now, I just want to say that the session is a little bit different to what was promoted in the documentation, but that's just, we got a lot of feedback about what people wanted from this session, and so we've modified it according to that, and I think it actually will be very useful for you guys. And at the very end, there'll be a Q&A session. So if we want to start with mobile market, prior to the World Cup 2010, their mobile was negligible at best. It was, sub 1% of bets, of revenues of customers. It was very, very small. About 18 months ago, it increased and became something like 3 to 5% of revenues. So again, it started growing, but it was very small. Then with the World Cup in 2010, that was the turning point and the tipping point for mobile gambling, where revenues increased by 400% just in that month alone. And you have, since then, mobile gambling has gone from sub 1% to about 15-20% of business for some of the key operators. So it's definitely been kick-started, and we're now at the point of it becoming a virtuous circle, where because money has been made, operators are now investing, which is something that they didn't do for quite some time, because original projections were ridiculously high back in 2005, 2006. They were huge, and they were unachievable, and they weren't achieved. So in actual fact, the overreaching projections served as a hindrance in themselves, because all operators saw was a repeated failure of this platform and this product to deliver. And so it really was, everybody will kind of confirm that the World Cup was the turning point for this. Now, with regards to mobile marketing, it's very rare that a mature industry like online betting now gets such a significant and disruptive product in the landscape, because what it really is doing, it is completely changing people's business, it's completely changing their approach to business, and in actual fact, most expectations of the operators are that within the next 2 to 3 years, mobile will generate 50% or higher of all revenues, certainly in the sports betting side. So for my report, for my research in that, I've spoken to over 45 key players, and I've interviewed them in various different capacities: operators, suppliers, payment companies, affiliate companies. So I've done an awful lot, and so everything that you're getting here is from them. It's straight from the horse's mouth in terms of what to do and what the market size is. So the first thing, this is from Juniper Research. This is probably the most commonly quoted number, which is that by 2015, the mobile market will be worth $48 billion. That is the single most commonly quoted stats. It does assume, though, the US market will open. It does assume continued liberalization in Europe, and it does assume that China continues to grow and joins the likes of Japan and Hong Kong in terms of their business. Because right now, the Japanese Racing Association contributes more than 50% of the entire global revenues, just that one organization. And the Chinese lottery is actually very significant as well, but I'll cover those later. On a more kind of more realistic level, in terms of these figures are without the US and without those major assumptions, but H2 Gambling Capital, they said the market is worth 2.2 billion euros in gross gambling yield in 2010, again with the Japanese Racing Association contributing most of this. And they estimate that that share will decrease to 40% because of funnily enough, the economic effects of the earthquake, and also the strong and continued growth of the other markets. And their suggestions are that the gross gambling yield will be worth 5.4 million euro by 2015. So again, this does not include any revenues for the US market opening up, which is what the significant difference is with Juniper. So going to talk about now the original fear around mobile gambling, and it's the same as when internet gambling started taking off over land-based, which was, is it going to cannibalize our existing revenues? And this absolutely categorically has not happened. In actual fact, revenues in general, once a person bets on mobile as well as internet, almost instantly they become 20% more valuable to a company. And this is across the board. This is stats. Cozy Games, who supply a lot of different operators, have confirmed this, and it's supported by all of my research. In terms of player base, in terms of how many people are playing on mobile, there's definitely a standalone contingent, but in the immediate early stages, what you found is people have cross-sold to their own databases as a priority. And so you have anywhere between 17 and 37% of people's player base actually. Sorry, this is Nikki, everybody. I introduced you earlier. Anywhere between 17 and 37% of an operator's player base is actually playing on mobile. So, for example, 17% is around where Betfair's conversion is. But again, this is due to just the magnitude of their database. They still are one of the leading in terms of the revenues generated. You go 30% seems quite average. That's a consistent figure across the board. And then you go up to the likes of the financial betting and the binary betting. This is all up in the terms of spread betting is all up in the reach of 37%. But that's actually an indicator of their target market, which is the top 1% of revenue earners. And so what you have is they are very much people who have access to iPads, access to iPhones, and also what they have is they need for their intraday trading, they need to be online and to be checking their status. So that will always be higher than, say, sports betting or gaming. So going on then. So I want to go on. So It's taken a long while to get to where we are today. People started rolling out. They were looking at mobile in the kind of early 90s. Early 2000s. People started rolling out their mobile products, and mobile-only companies started coming on board around 2005, 2006. But like I said, it didn't take off, and there's a variety of different reasons. First of all, the devices were unsuitable. You were trying to shoehorn games, you were trying to shoehorn sports betting on very old devices that quite simply weren't up to the task. They were built for calls and texts, and so we were trying to make them do stuff that they weren't actually built for and capable of. And so what happened then was, of course, the user experience was hideous at best in the very, very early days. It has since then increasingly got much, much, much better, both as the devices got better and as the operators worked to the capabilities of the device rather than the ideals of the product. So then there was a complex download process. So if you remember the old phones, the Razors, the old Nokias, the process was you had to find the application, then you had to send away an SMS. Not all the SMSs came back. Not all the SMSs were activated on. There was breakdowns in terms of clicking to the download. Then for the people who did download, there was where did it go on the phone? There was no consistency among the devices. There was no consistency amongst the same devices on different operators. There was also no consistency amongst devices and operators intra-country. So for example, a Nokia phone in Vodafone UK was different and performed differently to the exact same phone on Vodafone in Ireland. So there was zero consistency, everything was fragmented. So customers had no idea where their download went. So they had to go seek it out. And of course this was a huge drop-off process, and there was huge attrition at this point. And so I think one of the most telling facts that I learned, it came from Selectivity, who were one of the earlier companies in the market, was for every 1,000 people that started a download process, by the time they got all the way through, registered, put money and placed a bet, you were down to 2 people. So this is how bad the situation was back 7, 8, 9 years ago. Again, that is remarkably different now. There was also execution only. So mobile gambling was treated primarily as an add-on to a much, much superior internet site. The games were better, the product was better, everything was easier, and you couldn't register, you couldn't deposit money, you couldn't see bet replays, you couldn't check your account. It was literally gameplay only. And so again, why would a customer do this when on their web they had everything they wanted and the gameplay and the performance was infinitely better? Mobile internet didn't take off on feature phones. It just didn't. You had, when 2.5G came about, that was when you could access browsers. Prior to that, it was text and calls only. And so with that point, it was assumed that everybody would be using the internet, but you had things like the MNOs, the mobile network operators had walled gardens. Things were difficult. Gambling was very difficult to find because it was behind adult content, and people had to opt into it to access it, or else in some cases it wasn't even on the phone until you called up and said, please put the adult content on the phone. So mobile internet just in general didn't take off, apart from for sports results and maybe a bit of news. And I think this is actually quite interesting because Probability have reported that Probability have been one of the early companies. They're a mobile-only games company. Their brand is Lady Luxe. That's their key brand in the UK. And they have reported that 82% of their business is done while people are at home, so not necessarily on the move. So mobile actually doesn't necessarily mean on the move or portal. Sometimes it means sitting on the sofa watching television with your phone in your hand. And again, I'll go into this in more detail later. As well, then at the very end, you have customer confidence. There was, it was the same as when people were starting on the internet. They didn't want to put their credit card details online. They didn't know the brands. And you have all these same problems, not to the same extent as the internet, but what mobile did was it brought a perceived vulnerability of the device. Because it was small, because it was portable, because it was just so little, it was perceived to be less secure than the fixed text internet. Again, these perceptions have evolved and they're much different now, but all of this went to hindering mobile gambling from taking off. So what is different now? The key thing is smartphones. Smartphones, and in particular Apple iPhone, when that was launched, that pretty much changed the market. It was built for and designed for customer use rather than it was built for the customer experience rather than built by technical people who wanted it done a particular way. And so with smartphones, with the advent of smartphones, people started using them for more than text and calls. Internet took off, apps took off, and suddenly our lives are changed with smartphones. They've become much more than just a mobile communication device. So that's a huge, probably the single biggest transformation in the mobile gambling industry. In addition, you have in-running betting. Mobile is pretty much made for in-running betting. Whether you're watching a match at home, whether you're watching a match in the pub, where you're watching a match or going, say, horse racing and you're in the grounds, mobile is just there, it's in-running. And if you look at this, mobile grew hand in hand. So again, it's like a virtuous circle. Up to 60% of people's bets, sports bets, excluding horse racing, are now in running. And this figure, I know William Hill and Sky Bet both quote 60%. So others quote around the 40-50 mark, but it's in-running betting is a significant part of sports betting now. And this goes hand in hand with mobile because an increasing proportion of those bets, those in-running bets, are being made on mobile devices. So you also have behavioural changes that have had a significant impact. First of all, with the smartphones, mobile internet took off. But also then you have what's known as the two-screen experience or the multi-screen experience. And this is predominantly when we're sitting in front of the television. People have their phones, their mobiles, their iPads on their laps. They're either tweeting about programs, or they're betting about programs, or they're updating their Facebook, or they're updating their Google+. But we very, very, very rarely sit down and just watch television now. We now watch television with the internet in some form in our hands. And so this two-screen experience is actually changing because operators are adapting, and so they're increasing the numbers of in-running bets. I think, again, William Hill, I think they run 40,000 different in-running markets on a weekly basis. And this is just a testament to where the market is going. People want to be able to bet on the next kick or the next point in tennis. And so this is ideally made for mobile. You also have demographic correlations. Sorry about the spelling there. You have demographic correlations. Smartphone users, and in particular Apple iPhone users, are very, very close to the demographic of sports betting punters and online gamers. In particular, their high disposable income. They have a propensity. They're male. They're 18 to 40. There's a propensity to gamble. There's a propensity to use apps. So in actual fact, you see a very high correlation with that. And as more people become mobile only, what we're seeing is the lower end of the phone spectrum, so the lower end of the Androids, they're coming in slower, but they are definitely coming on. So mobile is very much a standalone product as well as one associated with the internet. And then you have data packages. This is more important for gaming and in-running than it is for actual just pure sports betting. The reason being is because originally you paid per megabyte of your GPRS data, whereas now it's all-you-can-eat packages. And so when you're not paying to play the game as well as actually paying for the game, that makes a big difference. And so suddenly, once people can access the internet for as long as they want on their mobile, they're more willing to try out different apps and, of course, gambling. Then you also have networks and Wi-Fi. 2G was the point at which browser-based and internet access started. 3G obviously was better than that, and that's when 3G was when mobile and mobile betting and gambling took off. In addition, you have Wi-Fi pretty much everywhere. There's huge penetration of Wi-Fi in all the key gambling countries. And as I said, if we go back to what I said about probability, the fact that most of their betting is done at home on the sofa, it means that Wi-Fi is the mode of access that's being used. In terms of obstacles, there's probably 3 different things that are worth mentioning here. First of all, payment processing. This is still, from the operator's perspective, one of the key areas that needs addressing, in terms of the fact that a lot of payment processors are only now developing mobile-specific payment apps and mobile-specific payment processes. Until now, they have been adapting their internet stuff, and while it works fine, it's very clunky. So if you think about form filling, it needs to be much smoother, much simpler. It needs to be touch screen rather than filling a whole bunch of forms. And so there's a usage difference in mobile than there is in internet. And the payment processors are actually lagging behind the gaming operators themselves in developing these mobile-specific applications. However, that being said, I've spoken to quite a few of them, and you have companies like Ucash, I know they're here today. They have a particularly strong offering. You have Envoy, Entropay, Wirecard. These are all companies that have realized and are very quickly making great inroads and great strides to develop develop processes specifically for mobile.
Hi, yeah. The other thing that we're also finding that's working very well, it's a bit old school, but you know, if it works, it works, is things like bonus codes, and also SMS is back to the operators, so that we're finding that when affiliates are getting players engaged with what's going on, then we're finding that sort of even just the old school stuff really works. We've, in the income access system, we've tested extensively the cookie stuff because we work with Lady Lux and also Fortune, and we're finding that actually the in-browser stuff is tracking really well. But we would really recommend, depending on what's happening with affiliates, that you really go back to the bonus codes, because then you can be assured that the player's going to be actually tracked to you. So, yeah.
Okay, am I back on? Am I on? Yeah. Okay, so going on to, thank you guys. Going on to the products then. Sports betting, I spoke about this a few moments ago. Sports betting and in-running, they go hand in hand. And sports betting is, to date, the lion's share of mobile gambling. There's a few reasons for this. First of all, in-running. Second of all, it's not bandwidth heavy, which pre-4G is actually very important. There's much more marketing around it, so more people are marketing their sports betting services than they are their actual gaming services, if they have both. You've got companies like Probability and Mecca Bingo that are obviously pushing their gaming products and their bingo products, but where operators, the big movers like the Paddy Powers, Betfairs, Ladbrokes, Hills, what they're pushing right now is their sports betting. And in fact, not all of them had their casino and gaming products on their mobile platforms, and they're only rolling them out now. So we'll see more movement in games, but until then it really is led by sports betting. In terms of casino and games, 4G obviously will make a big difference, and that's probably going to be the tipping point for mass market gaming. It'll grow strongly until then, but it's going to be the equivalent of the World Cup for that. But you also had companies like IGT, who have a lot of the brands, a lot of the slot brands across the board, and especially all the branded games, and they were quite reluctant pre-smartphone era to put their products and their games online, because quite simply the game experience and the game look and feel wouldn't be to an acceptable standard for their brand. So now that you have the quality of the smartphones, more companies are able to and willing to create the casino products and the gaming products on their on their platforms. In terms of bingo, you don't have that many bingo operators out there. Mecca is by far and away the leading one. And Probability have just recently launched a bingo product, and Probability is actually a very interesting one because they have modified the concept of bingo. The game plays exactly as it does, but they've made the cards a little bit smaller. So in a bingo card you have lots of spaces. They've eliminated those spaces, made the buttons bigger so that people can see them easier. They've also changed the speed at which balls are drawn and the frequency of which games are played, in line with the fact that people just jump in and out of their mobile gambling, whereas bingo players who are playing on their internet will generally make an appointment and sit down for an hour and they'll play. It's different on mobile, and so the companies like Probability that are recognizing this and modifying their products are going to be very strong. There's a few poker applications on the market now. Poker is lagging behind the others for a few different reasons. First of all, there's many issues in linking the networks to the internet networks. You've got latency, you've got disconnections. These are all very, very key problems specific to poker that don't exist with the others. And so while they're coming along now, you also have a lot of brand building. So for example, the World Poker Tour has an application that is down. It's a play for free application, but its downloads and its use is off the charts. And of course, then you have Zynga, who's Facebook for mobile, it's Facebook for internet, and its mobile application is the third most popular game, and their player numbers are in the millions every single day. In terms of markets, I'm going to run through this fairly quickly because I could do a whole session on this. In Europe is actually leading the way in terms of smartphone penetration, which is one of the key points of for mobile gambling to take off, as I've mentioned. So in the UK, it's in excess of 30-35% smartphone penetration. In Germany, it's 20% penetration, but they are leading the way with 4G. The European market is the most mobile gambling ready market. In North America, smartphone penetration is very high, but of course we've got the legislation issues. But mobile right now in the States means something different than it does pretty much anywhere else. Because if you look at Nevada, William Hill had bought American Wagering, and they have a sports app, a Leroy sports app. So they actually have a very successful mobile sports betting app that just works within specific casinos and specific casino resorts. In addition, Cantor Gaming have deals with Venetian, Palazzo, the new Plaza Hotel, the refurbished Tropicana, and it's called an E-Deck pocket casino. So people have a mobile device that they can walk around and they can gamble while they're at the pool, or they can gamble while they're walking around. So right now, in the immediate term, mobile is different in the US, but again, once it opens up, mobile will be just as prevalent as internet, and we'll have a different market there. In terms of Asia, it's a very different one. Their smartphone penetration is ridiculously low compared to Europe and the US. However, the Japanese Racing Association, the Hong Kong Jockey Club, and Chinese lottery Vodone are pretty much the lion's share of mobile gambling in terms of the revenues. So I think the Japanese, the JRA, they have a monopoly, and in 2008, mobile gambling and betting on that on their races overtook internet gambling. So they were the earliest one where mobile got to more than 50%. In Europe, they're expecting it to be 2013, 2014 before that happens. And in 2010, just to give you an example of their data, there was $7.3 billion turned over just by the JRA, and $1.6 billion in terms of gross win. Mobile accounts for 25% of the entire Japanese market. The Hong Kong Jockey Club is again worth $212 million in 2010, and it is very fast approaching the magnitude of Japan. And in terms of China, there's 15 million registered on their mobiles with the Chinese mobile lottery. Australia is Centrebet, Sportingbet, Paddy, Powe, who all have bases there. They all have apps there. Centrebets was just recently approved by the Apple App Store, but in actual fact, we all know the legislative situation in Australia, and what you're looking at is they have recently announced a review and specified explicitly that they're looking at mobile and in-running as part of that review, because they see this as a growing area that needs to be addressed. Africa has only 41% mobile penetration at all, so this is feature phones rather than smartphones, but it's growing very, very quickly. And in South America, again, it's very much feature phone dominant, but this is an interesting one because it's a market that an awful lot of people are looking at, an awful lot of the operators are looking at. Certainly I know IGT are looking there, you have I think Victor Chandler is looking there, and but all of the newer operators are not looking at feature phones, yet they are by far and away the dominant phones within globally. And so the companies that are new to mobile gambling are just concentrating on smartphones, and so they're actually ruling themselves out of getting real traction in some of the markets where smartphones will lag behind in terms of penetration. I think I've spoken about most of the devices, but I do want to talk about a couple of things because the landscape is dramatically changing. First of all, the Apple iPhone kick-started all of this, but then what you have is Android devices took over. They're now bigger than Apple, and they're expected to be more than 50% of the entire market by 2013. But what you have recently is you have I think I've got it on the next page, Google and Motorola. Google is buying Motorola for 12.2 billion, I think, 12.5 billion, because they've realized the usability and the customer experience is intrinsically linked both to the hardware and the software. So this is going to make a tremendous difference in the market, because they say initially that they're going to have Android continue to be an open platform, and they're going to run Motorola as a different division. But it's going to be very hard to imagine that's going to stay the same all the time, because what happens if their manufacturers don't deliver Apple quality phones, or they deliver late? Well, they're now in a position to push Motorola forward. So it's very likely that this will have a huge impact going forward, especially on things like BlackBerry, whose market share was being annihilated anyway by the others. But suddenly you're looking at a situation where Android and iPhone will be much stronger, and so BlackBerry is going to suffer quite a bit. Back again, in terms of tablets, iPad is currently 95% of the market. And you look at something like HP, they've just left the market recently. They had a fire sale of all their products. I think it was only Best Buy, which is one of the biggest retailers, had sold only 10% of their stock. And so they wanted to give it back to HP, but what they did instead, HP instructed a fire sale for around $200, and during the first 24 hours, 350,000 HP tablets were sold, and that was just through Best Buy and in the US. They then rolled that out globally, so suddenly you have HP is out there in the marketplace, because people were so cost sensitive that couldn't afford Apple, suddenly wanted a tablet, even though it's not the designer tablet that Apple is, and it's not going to be supported in the future. But what you found was the price sensitivity, which is what something like Amazon is going to be relying on. Amazon is perceived by many to be a game changer in the tablet market for a few reasons. First of all, they can do something that iPhone can't do. They can sell below cost. The same way as they've done with the Kindle, they make more money from the products they sell. So they've got their own app store, they can sell their own goods, and so they don't need the hardware to be at a profit. Whereas Apple do. Apple make the lion's share of their revenue from the actual sale of the iPad. So it's anticipated that the Amazon tablet, which is coming out in October, November, so in plenty time for Christmas, is going to sell at about $200 to $250, and that's going to be, for a lot of people, a game changer, because suddenly the Apple iPad has a very, very strong contender. I'm gonna pass you over to these guys in a second about this, because they'll have a lot, especially I think, Bill, you'll have a lot to say about this, which is the use. So it's very important for everybody, so for affiliates, for operators, to understand how the devices are used. So if you look at a computer, it's, let's call it a deep dive. People go for between 1 hour, 2 hours, up to 4 hours, sitting down, and they're doing deep levels of gameplay, of research. In tablets, they allow for a hybrid, so it's a mixture, but mobile is suited to skimming, so people browse for 1 to 8 minutes. Now, this actually makes a huge difference to the games development and to the marketing, because you have to make games that people will just go in and out of very, very quickly, and this makes a big difference. But Bill, do you have thoughts on this?
No, hang on. No? Hi, yeah, okay. Yeah, my main thoughts on this is to do with the landing pages on different devices. The iPad experience is actually quite similar in many ways to the desktop experience. It allows you to put more detail on the landing pages. People are less likely to mistakenly press a link. Some of our clients at Latitude we've seen have just done mobile versions of their desktop site, along with all the links, all the info. It takes an age to download on a smartphone. It's pretty slow on an iPad. And this just won't do, because the page you're going to want for an iPad is going to have to be scaled down from your desktop page, and for a smartphone even more. So there has to be gaps between the links, there has to be clear call to action, and if you're trying to get someone to pay and leave their credit card details, you can't have 3 pages of forms to fill in, because you'll just lose everyone at source. And so the best mobile sites we've seen are the ones where there's a very clear arrow, the arrows that take you through the payment process journey, so you know exactly where you are in the process, and any information that you can pre-populate in those fields is of enormous benefit, because, well, we've all tried filling in forms on a smartphone. It's laborious, it's not something we want to do, and you're more likely to wait till you get home and do it on your PC. So that would be my observation on that. My other observation is that you need to track the performance on individual devices. So if possible, you need to be tracking your performance and your conversion on an iPad away, and have a separate line tracking it on smartphone. That enables you to make changes, tweaks, which enhances conversion rates on each individual mobile platform. I think back to what Aideen said earlier was there's a big difference. When people talk about mobile, it can actually be the complete opposite of that. It's sitting on the sofa watching television, and you can be sitting on the sofa watching television on an iPad, but that's completely different to walking around town with an iPhone in your hand. So if you've got an iPhone in your hand, and I was on an event where Google was speaking, and what I remember from that was that Google have said, have you as marketers tested your mobile site in broad daylight outside? Do the icons show up in broad daylight? Can you navigate the mobile site walking with one hand, just the thumb of your right hand? So these are the questions you need to ask as sort of road test ahead of any decisions on landing pages on mobile devices. I think I've used up all my stuff for my slides now.
Hello? Hello? Okay. Going on then to the technology. I think the bottom section there, there's no doubt that the Android versus iPhone debate is done. The two of them are going to be the strongest OSs going forward for the foreseeable future. The question is, who will be number 3? You have things like Windows 7, you've got Symbian, you've got the BlackBerry stuff. So that's the bun fight at the moment. A lot of people are focusing on which will be bigger, which will be bigger. Both are players, so both need to be developed for and both need to be addressed. A lot of people, again, develop initially for the iPhone. And this makes sense to a degree, because while the iPhone is actually only, while the iPhone is now less in terms of volume than Android, for betting there's a higher correlation in the immediate term for iPhone users. So for example, if you look at something like Sky Bet, 60% of their bets come from iPhone, despite the fact that iPhone is has less penetration than Android. So a lot of people's development for the iPhone is actually, it's right to do that first, but you cannot neglect Android, and it's also growing much, much faster. iPhone is pretty stable. Android is growing in terms of the punters, the betting, and where it is there. You also have the J2ME native HTML5 questions. You know, do you create a native app, or do you create either an M-optimized website or a mobile app? For a lot of people, the initial was it all had to be native. It all had to be absolutely perfect. There's huge benefits to going native in terms of the gameplay, the graphics, the usability. However, you're at the behest of Apple and Android market in terms of where you can actually get online. And when the thing is discoverability is one of the keys for mobile gambling. Google's Android marketplace, our market, has completely prohibited any gambling products on their official market. Apple lets them in, but it's a very slow process. Operators, they don't get any feedback. It's either a yes or no. So anybody that gets a no doesn't know what they've learned. They do take sports bets, sports books, they do take casinos, but the tendency at the moment is towards public companies. So you've got the likes of Paddy, Powe, Betfair, Probability. All of these companies have apps on the App Store, and the other ones like MFuse have, I think, and it's a number in double figures of applications in for apps that they have developed, but they're just not getting any feedback, and they're taking a long time. So the approval by Apple is actually an ongoing process, but there's also the fear forever that they can just switch it off. So creating an app, a native app, is hugely expensive, and so people are reluctant to spend the money when they got zero guarantees of being able to put it online. So a lot of people are going to M-optimized websites or mobile apps. In terms of the operators, I've put a small selection of the brands here. I know some of these. I know certainly M Fortune is one of Nikki's clients. I think the other guys will work with. I think Bill works with Bet365. They're not there amongst others. Everybody's doing it. I mean, it very much is the case of if people don't already have a mobile app, they are in the process of developing it. And one of the interesting things with regards to the operators is, historically, mobile was just chucked in with internet. It was a small portion of the business, whereas now they're separating out in their results, they're separating out mobile and actually attributing most of the current growth and most of the current, an increasing amount of current revenues, they're attributing to mobile. So for example, if you take something like Betfair, they took their latest results, which just came out 2 days ago, they took 7.4 million bets in the last half, in half one of 2011-12. This is an increase of 94%. They took 4.2 million in terms of revenue, and this was an increase of 78%. And as I said, the penetration in terms of users is very high. So people are now attributing, and this is across the board, Paddy, Powe, Ladbrokes, William Hill, they're all separating out mobile, and you can just see, all you need to do is look at the reports, look at the, do some research, and you just see the magnitude of what the business is worth. In terms of sites, Paddy Powe was for a long time considered the benchmark. It's a Mobenga developed site, and it is very much, I'll show you what the old ones looked like. This was a very early M website. This is a BWin one, and as you can see, it's very simple. Now this is a Ladbrokes one, this is MFuse developed, and what you see here is there's two schools of thought. There's the very, very pretty graphic heavy, and this is an app. Ladbrokes one is also an app, the other one is an M-optimized site. So there's different things that you can do, but there's a few key things, and I'll show you here. As you see, the Paddy Powe one is a native app. Ladbrokes here, this is an M app, so you can see the top where it says add Ladbrokes to your home screen. This actually puts an icon on the home screen of the phone, so it's almost the same as an app and the usability is the same. And this is something that you'll see more and more in terms of the sites and the deployment, and this, something as simple as that, is a huge contributor to conversion and certainly retention, because you have something on the home screen. Now, this is where I'm going to be interacting with these guys much more, so if you want to make sure your microphones are on. Mobile marketing. Initially, people just replicated, they thought mobile internet is just internet on a small screen. That's completely not the case. People need to understand the devices, as I think Bill pointed out a moment ago. They need to understand the behavior, and they need to understand the intricacies of mobile gambling, how people use it. Also, in terms of marketing, there's a move towards discoverability from search, and that's a very important factor, because you need more than ever to have your product visible, assuming that somebody's going to happen across it rather than seek it out. So in terms of understanding consumer behavior, Bill is going to go into this much more in detail, but the term snacking is widely used in terms of mobile gambling. People go in for a short space of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, probably no more than that, unless there may be in-running sports betting on a game. So this has to affect the development and the marketing. So for example, in terms of the development, your game has to download quick. It's got to be very intuitive. The appearance on the buttons, the appearance needs to be very, very simple, because for the most part, I think there's a slide here which is up to 40% of people. This is research by Somo through their audience, and they have a lot of gambling clients. Up to 40% of their people on mobile, using mobile internet, are also watching television. So that's actually something that's really important, because you need to be able to capture people when actually you don't have their full attention, which is something very different to fixed internet. In terms of multitasking, Ofcom has said that it's 20% across the UK of people are doing more than one thing when they're on their phones. The iPhone is very different in terms of its usability to some of the lower end Android phones. So again, you have to understand how people use them. People with iPhones are much more happy to download apps than other people. And so you've got to understand your user behavior to decide. When you think something like apps, an awful lot of people, 39% of people still like MWeb, because according to a Scopus study, because it's familiar, whereas 19% will by default go to apps. And so this shows you where you need to understand where to market and how to market. Mobile to mobile is very important. This is something that I think Avery's going to talk about, because a great way to get around your issues with app stores is to get a generic app in there and advertise your gambling product through a different app. And so we'll cover that in a minute, but mobile to mobile marketing is actually very effective, and it's the same as SMS. It's, everybody bitches about it, but it's still the most effective tool when it's done right. Mobile specific offers, people want to see something for using the mobile. This is especially important when converting customers from the existing their fixed internet to mobile. Geography is important, because when you think about people with their mobile phones, it's a personal device, it's always switched on. So nobody wants to have an SMS coming offering them a free £10 bet at 2 a.m. in the morning, so they've been woken up for this. That's actually going to damage your brand. So understanding geography and where people are is going to be critical, because this is an area that a lot of people get wrong. You also need to understand where things might fail. So for example, if you're using pictures or graphics, some people have these switched off, some people don't have their phones. So you need to allow for what's called an elegant degradation. So what happens, you need to recognize the phone and allow that it still looks good, even if it's not the optimum, because the rendering of sites, the rendering of marketing is very different across phones. CRM is important, and I think Bill has already spoken about using the device when walking and with one hand. Again, mobile marketing is highly fragmented. It's not just a small internet. Do any of you guys have thoughts on the app stores, or shall I proceed on? Nope, I'll go on with this. Okay. As I mentioned, Android market has completely abolished any and forbidden any gambling apps to be promoted on their app store. This was done with pretty much overnight a few months ago, without any advance warning or advance notice. And this is the kind of fear that, as I said, comes with developing a native app. Is you really have no control. You're beholden to the app stores. Apple as well. The only way to get an app onto Apple is via the iStore. Whereas it's different with Android market, because you can use third-party ones. GetJar and Amazon are very important ones, and they don't care what app it is. They accept gambling apps, and so this is where, and there's hundreds and hundreds of third-party app stores, and so it's very important to get position on the app store, because when you think about it, I think I've got this. When you think about it, you've only got the 8 positions there. And so this is for betting, for instance. You've got BetDAC, Paddy, Powe, Skybet. The other 3, there's a snooker club there. There's, iFruitBomb. There's a few different things here. And so if you look, the importance of this is critical. You would think that the top 6 would at least be major betting companies, but surprisingly they're not. And I know, for example, Betfair, if you go on the iPad, Betfair has the first position, but it's not anywhere on the iPhone under search for some of the key terms. So they'll have some and then not have others, but it's really important to look at SEO and positioning on the App Store as well, because quite frankly, if you're not on the first bit, you're invisible. If you're not on the first page or 2, at the second, at the very outset, you won't get found. So you really, really need to work on this. And this is something that's new, everybody's learning, but it's absolutely critical. And it's especially important when we're talking about things like advertising in apps to betting apps, as affiliates are currently doing and will continue to do, because your kind of advertising app needs to be on the first page. So this cannot be underestimated. App use is prevalent, especially, as I mentioned, in terms of smartphones. Smartphone people are very happy. This is a slide that's taken from Google. Smartphone people are very happy to use apps. And in addition, it's worth thinking about the people deleting apps. And so you want to make it compelling, and you want to make your offers, keep giving people reasons to stay and keep the app there, because quite a few apps, I think I think this is a figure, 27% of apps get uninstalled within the first month. So it's very important. Now, this is all apps, not gambling apps, which would probably be a lower attrition rate, but it is incredibly important. Okay, this is using apps as a marketing tool. App to app has a very good conversion rate. It's also targeted. For example, one of the key ones is, for example, an odds aggregator. This is you if you want to get ready. An odds aggregator, Kyogi. They have apps for sports betting and for casinos, and they have their own business. They take sub-affiliates, and they also will have the platform that affiliates can use, because what they're seeing, it's an odds aggregator that's online. They're in the App Store. They're very well positioned. They spend an awful lot of time getting there, and they also recommend ways to get online. For example, your name must be short. You have to have your description when you get to the install section. You get a description that must be very compelling. You must have a lot of screenshots. Now, again, these are mistakes that others are making, because they're not using all of the steps and all of the media that you have to the best of its ability. And so something like this, when you're using an app as a marketing tool, for example, here's a Sporting Bet one. They have a little blue app of betting, which is terminology. It's assistance on this, and the Sporting Bet link at the top goes straight to their mobile website. Here's another one. Ladbrokes did for the World Cup with MFuse. This is something that MFuse call a disposable app, because it was just for the World Cup. They've done another one, they're doing one now for some racing. And basically what it is a little app. It's specific to an event. You can do one for Wimbledon, you can do one for the Grand Prix, and you can have it. I mean, this is a football one, and so the structure will be useful for maybe the Rugby World Cup, or the structure will be useful for more World Cups. So you can just sub in and out the information, and by doing this, if you think about how many people will download apps according to specific events, or for example, the X Factor has an app that's called X Factor Bingo, and you play. It just uses words like it uses phrases like, oh, whatever they say, that was underwhelming, or that sounded like a dying cat. So you can use that. Now, they don't link to gambling, but this is the sort of thing that's very, very possible. Lotteries are a good one, and two probabilities affiliates are doing this. They have little apps that'll tell you your lottery results, that you can insert your numbers and it'll do your tickets, and of course they link the games that are playable on the app are straight to probability, and this is a way to generate revenue. William Hill have a racing post app that they've done together, and this is a screen of the predictor. So based on the odds at the start at any particular price on the William Hill's odds before the race, you can actually run a little graphic race that'll tell you what horses are where. And Betfair has taken this to a new level, of course, as they often do. They have an app directory, and they've opened up their API to developers and affiliates, and you can get 5%, I think, is the revenue, and your app is listed in their app directory, and you can also, don't forget, put that in the Google, the Android, and if it's a generic app, that you can just get it approved by iPhone. So the key to that is to get something that's easily approvable by Google Market, by Apple, and then link to betting from that, because all the betting is harder to get on the app stores. There's nothing stopping you from doing app-to-app advertising for gambling. Okay, and at this point I'm going to hand over to Avery, and he's going to take over, and he's going to show you, he's got a poker planner application, and he's going to show you all about that in live running.
Maybe you can display the slides. Maybe you can display the slides that we have over here.
No, there you go.
All right. Let me see. Cool.
Okay. Are you on?
All right. Okay, I want to show you a few samples of apps that are used for marketing gambling services. One that we've developed and other ones that we work with. Basically, in OnMobi, what we do, we collect applications that are gambling related, and we use them for marketing gambling services. Whether they are native apps or web apps, doesn't really matter. We just divert the traffic from within the application directly to the service. Most of the services right now in the industry are not natives. I mean, there are obviously native apps, but Apple doesn't approve gambling. So even if they are native, they're just available in UK, Ireland, and Austria. Sorry, what's happening here? So what we can do is basically develop apps. I mean, affiliates can develop applications and use the applications to then divert traffic to these web apps. Fortune has just released their poker service this month, and which is still web app, but it's good because when it's a web app, it's still, I mean, everybody can reach it in different markets and not only in the UK. Why it doesn't work? One moment. Okay. You hear me?
Can you fix the direction?
Like this, better?
Choose the one and
Okay. Okay, so here is a sample of a Texas Hold'em application that let's see. A second. Is that connected to the internet? Let me show you a different one. Let's start with the poker planner here. This is an application we released to App Store last week. It contains tournaments for basically from online poker rooms. These services, most of them are not available on mobile, so we basically use the mobile media to divert traffic to online poker tournaments. Users can choose their favorite tournaments and basically order notifications for their tournaments when the tournament is starting. Like this, they can add notifications to all of the tournaments that they want, and then they won't miss any tournaments, because you know, like there are lots of poker tournaments that when the registration starts, it starts a few hours before the tournament itself. So instead of missing the tournament, they can come and use such an application to serve them and be able to register and RSVP their seat for specific tournaments online. Another thing that we did is basically we used the applications and we installed the banners that you see on the bottom here with Bets on Mobi. If we use, I'm sorry. Basically, when you press the banner, let me show you the banner again. When you press the banner, it redirects you to all the gambling services that are not native apps. And but once again, we use App Store traffic, and we can divert it directly to all of these native apps. So it's good for affiliates and also very good for operators to develop such applications and then use the media, because there's a lot of media over there. Obviously, like Aideen mentioned it before, you see that even on very targeted keywords that we fight for in the online services are still available on the App Store, and there's not, you don't see the market leaders in these keywords. So definitely there's a huge opportunity here. You can develop applications and position them high on App Store and enjoy the traffic and then divert it to all of the gambling services. Apple does approve, these things. So that's one thing said. The other thing is basically, we also develop the same, similar application that are, what doesn't work? Similar applications that are branded. So we can take a specific brand and put it up on App Store. But not only this, then the brand itself can market the application right to its users and use the apps as a marketing service to send all of his promotion directly to his players. It's used through notifications, through push notifications. I have it in the slides. We can show it after this thing. But basically, the brands receive a platform where they can. Sorry, let's use it. The brands receive a platform where they can send push notification to the players.
Shall I go to the slides?
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
Your
Yeah.
slides?
Mm-hmm. Right over here. Okay. Right. Okay, so QR codes also very important to use for marketing mobile services. We didn't mention it before, but it's a great way for all of the online assets for both operators and affiliates who have successful websites. Just use QR codes, and here you have full tracking to any application, or even whether it's a native app or a web app, it doesn't really matter. You can use the web traffic, and it's been proven that QR codes work much better than sending traffic to iTunes on a PC. I mean, people don't like to download the application straight to the PC and then convert them to the mobile, but they would rather just like download the applications or go to the web service directly from the mobile itself. So using QR codes is very, very good. Here you see the notification platform where the brands can then use it for marketing to their players. They can, once they market an application to their players, they can use this platform to send any notification they want. So instead of sending email marketing that has a low penetration, they can use push notification tools that have 100% penetration. This is basically selection of gambling applications, gambling-related applications. You see Gamble Guide and Texas Poker and Poker Planner, and all of these applications are pointing to real gambling services. All right, there you go. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Can I get back here? Am I back on? Hello? Okay. Right, so I'm moving on to SMS and MMS. These are still the most effective marketing tools available, even though they're considered very old school and they're considered very yesteryear. The thing is, they're also one of the easiest to really mess up. The reason being is one of the reasons are the best is you have an instant impact. So think about it now. People have their phone with them all of the time. So if you time something around a football game, around a television show, around something. So if you do marketing, if you contact your users around a particular event, they'll generally get that within minutes of you sending it to them. This is very different from email, going to traditional fixed internet, because people aren't online on the fixed internet all the time, and so they don't necessarily get something straight away. But think about what we said about the multi-screen experience. People are watching television, they're watching games and matches, literally at the time they've got their mobile internet. So if you were to send an email with an offer, or remind people that your app is there, or remind people that you have a Facebook page or anything like that, its impact is immediate. And for this reason, it's one of the most effective tools. But you have to get it right. Again, I mentioned you can't be sending something. You need to understand which country people are in. For example, you can't just send a blanket email to people in the States as well as people in the UK when they might be asleep or it might be the morning. You have to get the timing right, and this is something that's much more important in MMS and SMS that doesn't exist on email. It also needs to be offer-led. Think about, we still consider phones to be very personal devices. There's no opt-out, so pretty much everybody will open a text, even when people don't necessarily, they have junk folders on email, they won't open stuff that they don't see. People do open texts. So you're getting to them, but if you get to them and annoy them without offering them something of value, then that's going to damage your brand and it's going to damage your offer. In terms of this, Lady Lucks do it very well. The things that flag, the first two here are Lady Lucks. They flag that the text is free, so somebody's not paying for it. They flag it's personal. They've said hello to me. They have the time in these two, just so you know, I'm based in London, and they came early evening. They came about 6:30, 7 o'clock, just when I'm finished my tea and I'm sitting down to watch the television. They both have an offer or a value add to my life. One is completely free and the other is a secret bonus. They have support, they have opt-out. They use text speak, which again is something that is perfectly acceptable in terms of marketing by email. You don't want to overdo it, but you can use text speak because again it implies you're on the person's level. It's a peer-to-peer conversation, it's a peer-to-peer text rather than being terribly formal. And of course then they refer to social media. Again, if you look at the Ladbrokes ones, they have the same sort of principles. Now they're not personal, but they do offer something. So for example, it's the 4 places at the bottom. It's bet £1 or more, and you can watch the phone. So these again are very important. When you're doing marketing on SMS, you have to give something of value, and you have to do something right, because otherwise the damage to your brand is going to be irrecoverable. Avery's spoken about QR codes. Stan James does this very well. This is on their internet website where you can actually take the QR code and it downloads the apps. They're very, very good at doing this, but Avery's already covered QR codes, so I'm not going to go into much detail. Now, I think this is a bit where I'm going to hand over pretty much to Nikki and to Bill. Nikki, I think, first, but because I'm not even going to pretend that I know as much about SEO and PPC as they do. But I'll say a couple of points. First of all, what does SEO mean on mobile? I've spoken about the app stores. You need to get position on the app stores. It's not just about Google. On Google, though, and surprisingly, not everybody is doing this, but when you Google at the moment uses the same search parameters for internet as mobile. This is not going to be the case. They are going to, over time, separate out, and there's going to be a separate mobile search parameter. But at the moment, pretty much always, your internet site is going to be the first one that gets up, not an M-optimized website. So what the operators need to do, and what you need to do with your own apps if you're creating apps as marketing tools, is you need to do some device recognition and then redirect the people to the appropriate place. So you need to understand whether they're on a smartphone, they're on an iPad, or they're on a computer, and you need to redirect them to the appropriate site. Not everybody does this, and it's a big factor for a lack of for less conversion than what is otherwise easy to achieve. Also, you've got to think about keywords. I think I've got on this page here, the mobile search is on average 15 characters long. It takes 30 key presses and 40 seconds, so it's much longer. And so its short tail keywords are going to be much more important. People aren't going to write in something long on the mobile, so you've got to anticipate what they're going to do far better than you do on internet, because you have much more words to play with. 1 or 2 words and you're maxed out on the mobile. People aren't going to type in anymore. So you need to really be in tune with what people might be doing, and you need to keep it short. In addition, the top positions are critical. There's only 3, maximum 4 per screen, so you really need to bear that in mind. Pay-per-click is very interesting. Again, I've referred to the fewer words, and Nikki will have more to say about this, but what's very interesting is people use the predictions much more. So when you type in like BE on mobile, the word bet is there, and people use that much more on mobile than they do on the internet. And so this is very important for your pay-per-click. For example, if you type in BE on Google on some of the mobiles, William Hill is already there advertising. They're not waiting for the word bet, they're waiting for the word BE. And so you need to understand that people actually will use the Google predictions far more. And I don't have stats on this. There aren't stats. It's just a generic. They use them more online. But it makes sense, sorry, on the phone, because it makes sense because typing is that much harder. So I'm going back to what I was saying about you need to understand how people use their mobile and how people use their search engines much more. Nikki, I think you're going to talk about tracking, so I'm going to hand it over to you.